Moving on, Anthony Albanese has rushed back to Canberra after the G7 meeting at the weekend, where the leaders of the world's richest democracies made it clear to Beijing their stance on issues such as the Indo-Pacific and Taiwan, as well as issuing an important statement on what they call economic coercion. They called for China to play by the international rules. The G7 leaders also pledged to starve Russia of resources for its, quote, war machine. Joining me is the Director of Strategic Analysis Australia, Michael Shoebridge, to unpack what all of this means. Michael, thank you for joining me on the program. What were your thoughts on the G7's statement over the weekend? Was it a strong enough expression against some of China's behaviours?
Yes, Amanda, I think it was. I think the G7 statement on the weekend was refreshing and direct. A year ago, the G7 members were pretty much all over the shop on China. And on the weekend, we saw them take a very clear, united approach. The powerful democratic countries of the world all see that they need to reduce the risk of their economic dependence on China, and they've got a clear approach that they call de-risking. So I think they've been refreshing, united and strong, and Xi Jinping has himself to thank for it. But Australians should be delighted that Beijing's use of trade as a weapon against us has helped create this united G7 approach.
That's a really good point. We've now got more support from the international community for our economic position than we've seen in some time. Are there any other issues you would have liked to have seen the G7 cover?
Well, my real concern, Amanda, isn't about the G7. It's about right at the moment when the most powerful democratic economies on the globe have all recognised the risk and want to reduce their economic dependence on China. Australian policy is going in the other direction. Europe and the G7 and the US are de-risking engagement with China. Australia is desperately trying to grow the risks back, desperate to increase trade in all those things Beijing's battered us about.
That's a really interesting observation. You've written quite a good piece, in my view, today for The Australian. And the headline reads, PM goes soft on Russia, China, as other leaders step up to the mark in support of Ukraine. In what way is the PM going soft? And what do you think is behind it?
Well, look at our support to the Ukrainians fighting this brutal war against Putin. The Europeans and the Americans are shipping ammunition and drones and even opening a path to US fighter jets to support the Ukrainians in their fight right now. And Australia's like the kid at the back of the bus hoping no one notices it because we've done nothing lately. We could give them 100 Bushmasters, 100 Hawkeye off-road vehicles, drones and counter-drone technology made by Australian companies. We could give them the recently retired FA-18 fighter jets. We're doing none of that, and we're hoping nobody notices. And on China, right when the rest of the world has got the message, we're moving the other way.
Do you think there's a reason why not only we are going a counter to the rest of the world on China, but we're also softening our support of the Ukraine? Is there a common thread in that weakness?
Yes, Amanda, I think the government strategy is to be a small target, to be silent and keep very still internationally and call that the height of middle power diplomacy. But it really is more about distinguishing from the previous government. And the problem with that is the price for the government of getting that handshake moment between Albanese and Xi is us getting increasingly out of step with our trusted partners.
While in Japan, the Quad meeting did take place between Australia, India, Japan and the US. By all accounts, President Joe Biden did apologise to Anthony Albanese for cancelling his trip to Sydney, though there's been no plans made for the visit to happen at another time. Surely this plays directly into the hands of China. I mean, if the US can't even show up for a Quad meeting with an ally as important as us in the Indo-Pacific region at a time of relative instability, can we be assured and confident that the US has our back in our hour of need?
Well, Amanda, the good thing is the Japanese Prime Minister Kishida stepped up and got the meeting to happen in Hiroshima. But you're right, we didn't give President Biden enough of a reason to travel to Sydney. We're doing nothing new on Ukraine, and it looks like we're walking backwards on China. What was the compelling reason we gave? You don't get to the G7 as an invited member if you keep free riding. You've got to be a contributor. You don't get the US president to come to your country unless you're doing something new and important. That's the bigger picture here.
I really hope that gets heard in Canberra. I think that's the wisest thing that's been said in relation to the cancellation of President Biden's plans to come to Australia. I also have to ask you, before I let you go, about the World Trade Organization and its secret interim ruling in Australia's favour, labelling China's decision to slap 80% tariffs on Australian barley as illegal. The Sunday Mail and James Campbell reported it this weekend, and it says that in March, the panel gave an interim ruling to both countries in Australia's favour. Neither country has made the ruling public, and government sources refuse to comment on the outcome. Michael, why is this being kept a secret? Are we trying to spare embarrassment for China? Whose side are Labor on here? Are they on the side of barley farmers, or are they more interested in relationships with those who would seek to engage in trade warfare?
Well, Amanda, good on James for breaking the story, but it shouldn't be up to a journalist to give the news that Australia has been successful at the World Trade Organization and that China's trade coercion is illegal. That's globally important news that our government should be proud of. Hiding it just says to me there's such sensitivity about upsetting Beijing because of the priority on Mr. Albanese getting there and selling that as a triumph. But really, we're not helping ourselves by hiding China's coercion and the fact that the World Trade Organization has found it to be illegal.
Well, at least the Morrison government was prepared to fight for barley farmers, even if the Albanese government wants to hide it under a bushel.